everyone. We are officially live for our scholarships and financial aid panel tonight. I'm just going to give it a couple minutes to let people get logged in. Then we will do some introductions and get started with our conversation. So this is really going to be a conversation in which we cover a little bit of everything when it comes to that scholarship and financial aid process, the types of aid available through the college, and then how to make sure you're being considered for those opportunities. So my name is Emily-Davis Hamre. I am an Associate Director of Admission here at Agnes Scott College, and I work with both our domestic students as well as our international students at Agnes Scott. So I'm happy to kind of answer questions in either of those areas. And with that, we'll go ahead, dive in, and get started. So to start this conversation, I really want to just talk about the types of aid that are available at Agnes Scott. So when we talk about aid here, we're really talking about these three categories: merit scholarships, need-based aid, and then special scholarships. So those are the three different areas that we're talking about in this conversation. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into each of these areas and how to make sure that you're being considered for that kind of aid at Agnes Scott. Before we do that though, I want to start with just a couple of statistics that I pulled from our website. This link that you see at the bottom of your screen, agnescott.edu/affordability. It's one of my favorite pages on our website because it has some great information about the cost of college, aid available. A lot of the information that we're covering tonight is also going to be available at that agnescott.edu/affordability page. But it also just kind of helps you compare what are the costs of a private college versus a public institution, what are the different types of aid that are available at each institution. So a lot of great information, including the three numbers that you see on the screen now. So first of all, I want to mention 99% of students who attend Agnes Scott are receiving some kind of grant aid. So Agnes Scott definitely is committed to making the Agnes Scott College experience and at that education accessible to students as much as possible. So 99% of students do receive grant aid at Agnes Scott. For our in-state students, so students from Georgia, 88% is the average amount of need met by that full financial aid package. So your merit scholarships, that need-based aid we talked about, special scholarships, everything like that, about 88% on average of need is met for those in-state students. When it comes to specifically the Agnes Scott merit scholarships and the need-based aid available through Agnes Scott, 57% on average of the amount of the total cost of attendance for 1 year Agnes Scott is going to be covered by that Agnes Scott aid. So again, on average, about 57% of the costs are covered. So those are just a few numbers. Again, a lot more interesting information on that website if you want to dive a little bit deeper. For now though, we're going to switch gears and talk about that first type of aid that students can qualify for, merit scholarships. So for merit scholarships, students are really being considered for these based on their application for admission. So your overall application for admission, when you submit it to Agnes Scott, is also being submitted to have you considered for these merit scholarships. The good news in that process is that Agnes Scott reads applications holistically. So when we are considering you for your admission decision, we're truly looking at every single piece of your application that you're submitting to get a full picture of who you are and who you're going to be as part of our campus community. Because you're also being considered for merit scholarships in that process, you are holistically being considered for those scholarship opportunities as well. Your scholarship decision, that merit scholarship, is going to be awarded to you at the time of your admission decision. So you'll see kind of on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen our different scholarship or application deadlines. We have a few different ones that happen throughout the fall and in the spring semester. So we have our early decision binding application deadline on November 1st. Our early action 1 and 2 deadlines, those are non-binding, on November 15th and January 15th, and then regular decision on March 15th. For all of these deadlines, you normally get that admission decision about 4 weeks after the deadline, about 4 weeks after your application is complete. So when you do get that decision, you're also going to go ahead and get that merit scholarship decision and kind of have all that information up front available to you. I will mention early action 2, that January 15th deadline, is our scholarship priority deadline. So if you do want to be considered for the full range of merit scholarships that we have available, it's important that you're completing your application by early action 2 to have that consideration. And then the last thing that I want to mention is we are test optional. Agnes Scott has been test optional in our admission process for the past 10 plus years now. What that means for you is that when you are being considered, you do not have to submit SAT or ACT scores. And regardless of whether you submit those scores, you are still being considered for admission at Agnes Scott and for all of our merit-based scholarships. So you do not need to submit those test scores in order to be considered for merit scholarships. Now that we have that little quick overview of what merit scholarships look like, I do want to take a second and talk about the actual awards that are available in that merit scholarship category. The first one I want to mention is the Agnes Assurance Scholarship. So this one is new for us this year. Essentially, through the Agnes Assurance Scholarship, Agnes Scott is assuring students that if you are admitted for the fall of 2022, so those are our current seniors in high school, our transfer students, maybe students taking a gap year, but planning to join us on campus for the fall of 2022. If you're admitted, then you will automatically qualify for this $22,000 merit scholarship that's renewable for each of the 4 years that you're at Agnes Scott. So if you are admitted to Agnes Scott, you're assured that you have this $22,000 merit scholarship. However, like I mentioned earlier, you're really being considered holistically for your scholarship, merit scholarship offered here at Agnes Scott, which means the admission committee might read your application and decide that they would like to award you a slightly higher scholarship in that process. So overall, our merit scholarships really range from about $23,000 up to $26,000 per year, based on the strength of your application for admission. So you are assured to have that minimum $22,000 scholarship, but based on the strength of your application, you might be awarded a slightly higher scholarship that would replace that $22,000 scholarship. So that's a quick overview of what that merit scholarship will look like. Again, awarded at the time that you're admitted, so you get that decision with your admission decision, based on your overall strength of your application for admission. So the next thing that I really want to dive into is need-based aid. So that's that second type of aid that we're going to be covering tonight. In order to qualify for need-based aid at Agnes Scott, students are going to submit the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. So the FAFSA opens up on October 1st every year, which is just over a week away at this point. Once it is open on October 1st, you're welcome to log on to the website, studentaid.gov, and go ahead and start working on your FAFSA and submit it to Agnes Scott. When you are working on that FAFSA, it's going to collect your tax information for you as well as your family members based on your prior year taxes. So if you're applying for the fall of 2022, that means it's going to use your 2020 tax information in this process to share with colleges and come up with your estimated family contribution, the amount that they think you might be able to contribute to your overall college education. The FAFSA is going to be open to U.S. citizens or U.S. nationals, U.S. permanent residents, as well as some eligible non-citizens. So if you do go to studentaid.gov, you can actually see the full list of who's eligible to complete the FAFSA and submit it to different colleges and universities. If you do have questions on this piece in particular, I also put our admission email on here. So admission@agnescott.edu. If you go to the website, you're still not sure about whether or not you qualify for the FAFSA, please feel free to reach out to us. Send me an email at admission@agnescott.edu. I'm happy to talk through that process with you and answer any questions that you have. And then last but not least, Agnes Scott releases financial aid packages for students really beginning in early February. So if we go back and remember those application deadlines that we talked about just a couple minutes ago, you'll remember we have our early action 1 deadline on November 15th, January 15th is early action 2, and then March 15th is our regular decision. If you're applying for November 15th, that means you're going to get your decision back December 15th. Go ahead and get that merit scholarship decision as well. But you might have to wait a couple of weeks, couple of months before you get that financial aid decision and that full financial aid package. So just keep that in mind that some of that information might come a little bit later in the process. Having said that, we generally recommend that you go ahead and complete the FAFSA at the same time that you are completing your application for admission. So not waiting until you get to that January or early February timeframe. That way, if you're applying for early action 1 on November 15th, you submit your application, you submit your FAFSA, and then you have nothing left to worry about as you're waiting for your decision and financial aid package. So that's a quick overview of the FAFSA itself. I do also want to talk about kind of the aid that you're going to be considered for at Agnes Scott once we do have that information. So once we have your FAFSA information, you're considered for federal grants like the Pell Grant, federal loan programs like the Stafford loans, which we'll talk a little bit later. If you're a Georgia resident, you're considered for state aids like the Hope and Zell Miller Scholarship. And then for all students, you're also being considered for institutional grants from Agnes Scott that are going to be based on that FAFSA information. To go back and talk a little bit more about those Georgia students and the types of aid that you might be eligible for. If you do go to high school in Georgia, you might have heard of the Hope or Zell Miller scholarships before. So we do work with both Hope and Zell Miller here at Agnes Scott. But as a private institution, it works a little bit differently than it would at a public institution like Georgia Tech or Georgia State. So at Agnes Scott and other private institutions, it's coming in as a set grant amount each year that you're eligible for Hope and Zell Miller. So you'll see this grant award on your financial aid package from Agnes Scott. For the Hope Scholarship, it's normally about $4,300 per year. And then for the Zell Miller, it's about $5,616 per year. So in addition to that, Georgia residents are also able to qualify for the Georgia Tuition Equalization Grant. So we call it the GTEG here at Agnes Scott. That GTEG is worth $850 per year. So if you're qualifying for, let's say, the Hope Scholarship as well as GTEG, you can know I have about $5,500 in aid that I'm getting from the state of Georgia. That's going to stack on top of that $22,000 scholarship that you'll be getting from Agnes Scott. So go ahead and start kind of keeping some of those numbers in mind as we're moving through the conversation tonight. Okay, so we've covered merit scholarships, we've covered need-based aid. The next thing that I really want to talk about are special scholarships at Agnes Scott. So this is kind of that third category of aid that we have available for students. With these special scholarships, essentially, they are just requiring an additional step in order to be considered for these opportunities. So I'm going to go through the list of some of those special scholarships that we do have available. And then if you have questions about them, you're welcome to visit our website to get some more information, or you can put those in the Q&A as we go along. The first one I want to talk about is the Great Scott Grant. So anyone who's applying for the fall of 2022, if you attend one of our Great Scott Open House events, then you're automatically going to get this $1,000 scholarship if admitted to Agnes Scott for the fall of 2022. So there's nothing else you need to do other than attend our Great Scott event. And then that scholarship will be renewable for all 4 years that you're at Agnes Scott. We have one more in-person Great Scott happening on November 13th, as well as 2 virtual sessions, one in October and one in November. So if you attend any of those three, normally it's about 2 to 3 hours on a Saturday morning. So either being on campus or drinking a cup of coffee on your couch on a Saturday, you're able to qualify for this $1,000 Great Scott grant. So to sign up for one of those events, head to agnescott.edu/GreatScott. Our other special scholarships are all going to require an application in order to be considered for those scholarship opportunities. And they're really kind of provided mostly through the generosity of donors to Agnes Scott Scholarship, to Agnes Scott College. So for these scholarships, the reasons that they have applications and the reasons that maybe they have particular guidelines that they're looking for in their recipients is because they're being provided through outside donors. Having said that, I do want to say the vast majority of aid that we have available for students are going to fall in that merit scholarship and need-based aid category. So if you are completing your application for Agnes Scott by January 15th, if you are completing your FAFSA and submitting that to the college as well, you truly are being considered for the vast majority of those scholarship opportunities. But we're going to run through those special scholarships so you can see if maybe you fall into one of these categories as well. The first two that I want to talk about are the Guazetta Foundation Scholarship and the Golden Door Scholarship. So Guazetta Foundation Scholarship, this is a scholarship that gives preference to students who identify as Hispanic or Latinx and have shown kind of strong leadership and academic skills within their community. And then the Golden Door Scholarship is awarded to students who either have DACA or TPS status or who are undocumented or underdocumented. So if either of those sound like you, you can go to agnescott.edu/financial aid to see those applications. For the Guazetta Foundation Scholarship, that application is going to be due on February 1st for consideration. So go ahead and check those out. These next scholarships are going to be our religious scholarships here at Agnes Scott. So affiliated with a particular religious organization. The first one is the Presbyterian Scholarship. This is really for students who have shown leadership within the Presbyterian USA Church. There's the Wasserman Scholarship, which is awarded to Jewish students. And then the Whitehead Scholarship, which is for students who self-identify as Christian and who live in the southeast of the United States. So if any of those sound like you, the application deadline is still going to be February 1st, just like the Guazetta. And you can go, again, that same website, agnescott.edu/financial aid to get a little bit more information and see what the award amounts are for those scholarships. And then last but not least, we have a couple of scholarships that are based on your academic interests. The first one is going to be the Summit STEM Scholars Program Scholarship. So this is awarded to 10 students who are going to be applying for the fall of 2022 and are interested in specific STEM fields. If awarded this scholarship, then you have, of course, a scholarship that goes towards your overall cost of attendance. But you'll also be part of a cohort that's going to have specialized programming and specialized events and mentorship as you're going through your STEM coursework at Agnes Scott College. The other academic scholarship we have is the Nanette Hopkins Music Scholarship. So this one is for students who want to either major or minor in music. The application deadline is February 1st for this one as well. However, I do want to mention that the music scholarship does have an additional audition that is required in order to be considered for that scholarship. So keep that in mind as well, if that sounds like something you might be interested in. Okay, I know that was a lot of information to cover, but we talked through the merit scholarship opportunities, the need-based aid that students can qualify for, as well as some of those special scholarships that students might be eligible for. So that's kind of a quick picture of what those scholarships and aids look like at Agnes Scott. So I really want to switch gears now and talk a little bit more about how you can prepare for the financial aid process and really talk about covering the costs of college with your family and with the people who are supporting you in this process. The first thing that you need to know in order to have that conversation is what the cost of college actually look like. So at Agnes Scott, the cost for 1 year is going to be just over $57,000 per year. So within that number, you'll see our tuition, our room and board, a student activity fee, as well as our orientation fee being included in that overall cost. Once you have an idea of the overall cost, you can kind of work backwards and think, okay, well, this is what my merit scholarship might look like. If you're a Georgia resident, this is maybe what the Hope or Zell Miller would look like, and get a sense of what your gap is. So that remaining cost that you might be having to cover yourself or with the help of your family or support system. As you're kind of working backwards, a good tool that you have access to is going to be Agnes Scott's net price calculator. So if you go to the link you see at the bottom, go to our website, you can fill out our net price calculator, put in your academic information, put in your family's financial information, and it'll just give you an estimate of some of the aid opportunities that you might qualify for, either through the federal government, through the state government, or from Agnes Scott. So that can also kind of help you plan what is going to be that remaining cost that you might be responsible for if you were to attend Agnes Scott. So it's not going to be an exact picture of your financial aid package, but it helps you get a good idea as you're waiting for that package to be released in early February. Once you do have an idea of what those costs might look like, you can start the conversation on how you're going to close that gap and cover those remaining costs. For a lot of Agnes Scott students, outside scholarships end up being a really important piece of how they cover those costs of college. Outside scholarships are going to be scholarships that are awarded maybe through local businesses, community organizations, nonprofits, lots of different avenues that students are able to find these scholarships, anywhere from small $500 to $1,000 scholarships up to larger national scholarships, to just help you cover those remaining costs, not covered by the aid you're offered through your financial aid package. If this is going to be an important piece of kind of how you're covering the cost of college, I recommend getting started in this process as early as possible. And we put together a couple places to help you start that conversation and start that search process. So first of all, definitely explore our outside scholarship resource page on our website, agnescott.edu/outside scholarships. It has a list of scholarships that students have been awarded in the past at Agnes Scott, and can really just help you kind of guide that process and get started in that process of looking for outside scholarships. If you haven't already, reach out to your guidance counselor at your school. They're often aware of scholarship opportunities that could be available within your high school, within your local community, certain businesses that might have scholarships, anything like that. So check in with your guidance counselor because they're often a great resource in this process, but also check in yourself with some of those local organizations. A lot of small businesses in your areas, larger companies, nonprofit organizations might have small scholarships that are available for students. And for those scholarships, if it's within your local community, it might also be a smaller pool of students applying and competing for those scholarships. So it may be that you're able to build a few of those smaller scholarships and really stack them on top of the aid you're being offered from the college you attend. You can also use scholarship search engines. There are a couple out there like FastWeb and Unigo, where you're able to put in some of your academic interests, some of your demographic information, your interests outside the classroom, and it really matches you with scholarships that you might be a good fit for. So those can also be helpful in finding some of those scholarship opportunities. And like I mentioned, this is something that our students tend to be pretty good at. So we did get some tips from our current Scotties as well to really kind of help you through this process and get started. So some of the advice that they have was, first of all, just get in the practice of saving everything that you write, whether it's a paper for school, if it's a scholarship essay, if it's your essay for admission, whatever it is, get in the habit of like maybe keeping a folder on your computer, on your Google Drive, a USB, whatever makes sense for you, where you're storing all that information, because you never know when you're going to be able to go back to a piece that you wrote and rework it for a scholarship essay, maybe get inspiration for a scholarship essay, and kind of help your future self out as you're going through that process. Second piece of advice is to set aside time each week to actually search and apply for scholarships. So this is advice that we give in the admission process as you're working on your application for admission, to schedule time to work on your application. So that way you can also have time where you don't have to worry about your admission and your application. The same goes for outside scholarships. If this is going to be an important part of how you're covering those costs, then go ahead and set aside an hour a week, 2 hours a week, where you're going to dedicate the time to actually find and apply for those scholarships so that you can use them to cover the cost of college. Use those scholarship search engines we just mentioned, like Unigo, like FastWeb, but also again, check in with those local organizations to see what scholarships might be available in your own backyard. And then the last piece of advice they have, you should never have to pay to apply for an outside scholarship or to have access to a scholarship search engine. So if it is asking you to pay for it, then maybe have a little bit of hesitancy before you apply for that one, and double check that it's a legit organization before moving forward with that process. So that's some helpful tips from our current students and going through that outside scholarship process and really using that as a way to help cover the costs of your education. The next piece I want to talk about are loans. So loans are definitely another way that students do cover some of those remaining costs and close that gap that might not be covered by aid and grants from the college or from the government. So students who do complete the FAFSA are automatically going to be considered for the Stafford loans, which are through the federal government. So these will be a part of your financial aid package from Agnes Scott if you're completing the FAFSA. For the Stafford loan, there are two different types. There's a subsidized and an unsubsidized loan. And whether you qualify for subsidized versus unsubsidized is really just going to be based on your FAFSA information. For the unsubsidized loan, essentially you are just collecting the interest for that loan while you're a student in college. You can either pay that interest off monthly as you go through your 4 years, or you can let it accrue and pay it off once your loans go into repayment after graduation. For the subsidized loan, the federal government is just paying off that interest for you while you're still a student, so you don't have to worry about making that monthly payment yourself or accruing the interest. For both of these loans, however, you don't actually have to start making those repayments until after you graduate or are no longer a full-time college student. So you have 6 months after that graduation date before your loan payments begin. If loans are going to be part of your plan to cover the costs of college, it may be that you want to look for additional loans outside of just the Stafford loan. If that's the case, definitely kind of do some homework and see what loan options are out there. There are other loans that might be available through your state government, through your local government, as well as through nonprofit organizations. So we have a couple examples of these up on the screen. The first is the Student Access Loan. This is a loan offered by the Georgia Student Finance Commission. So if you are a Georgia student, it's a good option for you. It has a 1% interest rate, fixed 1% interest rate. So it's a really great option for students in the state of Georgia who are interested in loans. And then the Student Aid Foundation, this is a nonprofit that offers loans to female students who are planning to attend college in Georgia, once again with that fixed 4% interest rate. So like I said, there might be some other good loan options out there if you are considering that and you're planning to cover the cost of college. Okay, so we've covered the types of aid you can qualify for at Agnes Scott. We've talked through some options to help cover the gap. And so now kind of this last piece of the conversation that I want to have is just going to be about like, how do you actually start this process? We gave you some resources, we gave you some information, but what conversations can you actually be starting once you log off this webinar tonight? So that's really going to be this next part of the conversation. The very first thing that you can do is just start a conversation. This doesn't have to be tonight. It's okay if you wait another day or two, wait until the weekend, maybe schedule time for next week. But at some point, just start a conversation between you and whoever is supporting you in this college process. That might be your guidance counselor at school, it might be your parents, older siblings, grandparents, aunts and uncles, a mentor, anyone who is really helping you through this process. Sit down and start this conversation. Figure out kind of what funds you do have to contribute towards your college education. So you as a student, do you have savings maybe from a part-time or summer job that you're going to be contributing towards your education? If so, is this just for your first year, or are you planning to stretch out those savings across all 4 years? Are you planning to work every summer in between the academic years to build up those savings for the next academic year? So go ahead and figure out what your contribution might look like for your college education. Second thing to talk about, what funds do the people supporting you have to contribute to your education? Do they have savings set aside? If so, is that just for your first year, or are you once again going to be able to stretch it out across your 4 years of college? So have that conversation as well. Is there an amount that you or your supporters could contribute to your education on a monthly basis? A lot of colleges, including Agnes Scott, have a monthly payment plan option. So if you're figure out, okay, between me and my supporters, we can contribute $500 a month, then maybe you're able to put $500 a month on a monthly payment. And then you can figure out, okay, well, what outside scholarships or loans can we use to cover the rest of my gap after my scholarships and grants have been applied? So figure out, once you've had that conversation about savings, then what is it that you might be able to contribute per month towards your education? We talked about this a little bit already, but figure out, are loans going to be a good option for you? Do loans make sense for you, your supporters, and kind of your plans for after Agnes Scott or after your college education? And then once you've had those conversations, you've talked through all of those points, make sure you're connecting with your guidance counselor at school and your admission counselor at Agnes Scott or whatever colleges you're applying to, and bring those people into the conversation as well. Your guidance counselor as well as your admission counselor have a lot of knowledge about this process and can be really good resources and allies as you're trying to really navigate it and figure out how to cover the cost of college. Okay, you've had the conversation, you've brought in your guidance counselor, you've brought in your admission counselor. The next piece, if you're still trying to figure out how am I going to close that gap, how am I going to cover those costs of college, is to explore other sources of funding that might be available to you. A lot of employers have scholarship programs that are available either for their employers or employees or for their dependents to attend school. So maybe if you have a part-time job or a summer job, check in with your employer, check in with maybe where your parents work, and see if they have those scholarship programs that you might qualify for. If someone in your family is a veteran, the Department of Veterans Affairs does have a wide range of educational benefits that are available for veterans and for their dependents. So it may be that you're able to qualify for some additional aid through the Department of Veterans Affairs. So definitely check out the VA website, or if you go to our website, again, agnescott.edu/financial aid, you can look at our Veterans Affairs page and see what kind of benefits you might qualify for. Are there outside scholarships that you might be a good fit for? We've talked about this before. It's a great way to help cover some of those costs of college. So go ahead, create a plan for how you're going to be applying for those scholarships, and maybe a budget for how much scholarship funds you need in order to help you cover those remaining costs. And then lastly, go ahead, continue that conversation about loans. Learn about the different loan options out there, whether it's through a nonprofit, through the state or federal government, maybe through a credit union. Just see what different loan options are out there, and then which ones are going to make sense for you, your family, and your support system. Okay, and then the last piece of information that I have for you is just who you can reach out to at Agnes Scott's campus when you do have questions about any of these different pieces that we've covered. So if you have questions about the pieces of your financial aid package, so once you do get that financial aid package, you have questions about how different grants work, how different loans work, what you have to pay back versus what you don't, check in with your admission counselor. We are all trained to talk about financial aid. We want to have this conversation with you. We want to make sure that you have a good plan to cover the cost of college for 4 years and to be a part of that process with you. So definitely set up a financial aid conversation with your admission counselor so we can walk through it together and talk through your options at Agnes Scott. If you have questions about your scholarships or other sources of funding as you're going through this process, again, those are great questions that you can send to your admission counselor at any point and get a little bit of help and advice from them. If you're going through the process and you have specific questions about your FAFSA, about the verification process, you need to update or make adjustments to your FAFSA, or you have questions about veterans benefits, those are really going to go to our Office of Financial Aid. So they're the experts when it comes to the FAFSA and can really help you through that process. Believe it or not, that was everything that I have to cover when it comes to financial aid, merit scholarships, special scholarships, how to have these conversations with your admission counselor and with your support system. But everybody have a wonderful night, and hopefully we'll hear from you again soon. Good night, everybody.